Two little girls asked a stranger to be their new daddy. What they didn't know was that he already was. Andrew Scott had always believed that some moments in life come without warning, crashing into your routine like a wave you never saw coming. That morning had started like any other. He had just stepped out of his black town car in front of his corporate building in Manhattan, his coffee still warm in one hand, his mind already filled with meetings, deadlines, and acquisitions. The steel and glass tower of his office reflected the city skyline, cold and gleaming, a monument to his ambition and the sacrifices he had made along the way. He was walking toward the entrance, sharp in his navy suit, polished shoes clicking against the sidewalk, when a strange sound caught his attention, a soft, high-pitched voice that didn't belong in this part of town. He slowed down just slightly, enough to notice them. Two little girls, no older than 5, were standing near the corner of the building, dressed almost identically in pale pink dresses and denim jackets. Their blonde curls bounced as they moved, and their big blue eyes seemed to scan every adult that passed them by. They looked like twins, mirror images of each other, delicate and bright against the gray of the city street. And then he heard it. "We're looking for a new daddy, ours is bad." The words weren't said in fear or desperation, they were spoken with a child's strange, innocent honesty. One of the girls approached a woman in a suit who brushed them off with a confused smile. The other girl tried to catch the attention of a man on his phone who barely glanced down before continuing on. Andrew watched, frozen in place, the words echoing in his mind. Something inside him stirred, something old and quiet that he had buried years ago. He took a few steps closer, not sure why. The girls turned to him, curious. One of them walked right up to him, her face tilted up, her hands clutching a small paper sign with shaky handwriting. It read, "Looking for a new daddy." "Would you be our new daddy?" she asked, as if it were the most natural question in the world. Andrew felt his throat tighten. He crouched down slowly, leveling his gaze with hers, and asked softly, "Why are you looking for a new daddy?" The other girl stepped forward and answered, "Because ours is bad. He hits mommy. And he says he doesn't love us." The air left his lungs. He wasn't a stranger to cruelty, he'd seen it in boardrooms, in business deals, even in his own past. But hearing it from the mouth of a child, so matter-of-fact and unprotected, was like a punch to the chest. He looked at them more closely. Something about their faces, those eyes, stirred a strange familiarity he couldn't place. It made his heart race in a way he hadn't felt in years. Before he knew what he was saying, the words slipped from his lips, raw and unrehearsed. "I want to be your new daddy." They smiled then, wide and genuine, and reached for his hands like they'd known him forever. And as they stood there on that busy sidewalk, surrounded by strangers and skyscrapers, Andrew Scott, the man who had everything, suddenly felt like he was meeting his whole world for the very first time. What he didn't know, not yet, was that these girls weren't just lost children looking for kindness. They were his. And the woman they were trying to protect was the same one he had walked away from 5 years ago. Andrew didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse apartment, but all he could see were those two little girls, blonde curls, blue eyes, soft voices speaking truths no child should ever have to say. Their words echoed in his mind, twisting something deep inside him. "He hits mommy. He doesn't love us." It wasn't just the horror of what they'd experienced, it was their acceptance of it. The way they'd spoken like this was simply how life was. He'd seen pain before, but this was different. This was personal in a way he couldn't explain, not even to himself. Something about those girls had grabbed him and refused to let go. By morning, he had made up his mind. He had to see them again. Ditching his meetings, he returned to the same street corner, dressed more casually now, no tie, just an open collar and a dark jacket. He stood by the building, trying to look casual, but his eyes scanned every face, every movement. He didn't even know their names. The thought hit him hard. He had offered to be their new daddy, and he didn't even know their names. Then he saw them. They were sitting on a bench near the same corner, sharing a juice box. Their legs dangled above the pavement, kicking slightly in rhythm. As Andrew started walking toward them, a woman emerged from a nearby pharmacy, holding a paper bag and looking tired. She was tall and slim, dressed in simple jeans and a faded sweater, her brown hair pulled back in a loose bun. Her eyes were tired, her posture guarded, but even from a distance, he knew. It was her. Sarah. He stopped walking. The past surged toward him like a tidal wave, memories of laughter in the rain, of late-night whispers, of the moment she had told him she was pregnant. And the moment after, when he'd walked away. Her name left his lips before he could stop it. Sarah? She turned, startled, and their eyes met. For a second, neither of them moved. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. The bag nearly slipped from her fingers. Andrew, she said, almost breathless. He took a hesitant step forward. It's really you, he said, barely able to believe it himself. I saw the girls yesterday. They spoke to me. I didn't know. Sarah turned toward the bench where the girls were now looking at them with mild confusion. She walked to them quickly, crouched down, and whispered something, then turned back toward Andrew, her shoulders stiff and tense. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly, firmly. He raised both hands slightly, not in surrender, but to show he wasn't a threat. I didn't know it was you, Sarah. I swear. I didn't come looking for you. I just saw them. They looked familiar, and when they spoke. Her voice was sharp and low. They talk to strangers because they're desperate. That's not something to be proud of. I'm not proud, he said. I'm horrified. And confused. Anne. Sarah, are they? Don't, she interrupted, already knowing the question. You gave up the right to ask anything 5 years ago. He felt that like a slap, but he didn't move. I didn't handle it right. I know that. I was scared. And selfish. But if they're mine. They are, she said, without hesitation. They're yours, Andrew. Lily and Sophie. You left before you even heard their names. His breath caught in his throat. Everything he had been trying not to feel for 5 years, guilt, grief, shame, hit him all at once. He looked at the girls again. They were watching the conversation with curiosity, not fear, as if they knew something was happening but didn't fully understand. He crouched slightly and gave them a small wave. Hi, he said softly. I'm Andrew. I used to know your mom. They looked at him, puzzled. One of them whispered to the other, then giggled behind her hand. The sound broke the heaviness for a moment, but Sarah's voice brought it back. What do you want from us? She asked, her eyes narrowing. I don't know yet, he admitted honestly. I didn't come with a plan. I just couldn't stop thinking about them. About you. Her face changed slightly, a flicker of pain passing through. She looked down, then back up, her voice quieter now. You left without a word, Andrew. I was terrified. I had no job, no money, and 2 babies coming. You vanished. You changed your number. I thought maybe something had happened to you. But nothing did it? You just left. He shook his head slowly, guilt settling like lead in his chest. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I would only make things worse if I stayed. I was scared I'd turn out like my father. Angry. Absent. I didn't think I was strong enough. Sarah crossed her arms, not out of anger now, but self-protection. You don't get to rewrite history, Andrew. You don't get to show up now and play hero. I'm not here to play anything, he said. I just want to know them. I want to understand who they are. Who you became. I don't expect anything. But I couldn't walk away this time. For a long moment, Sarah said nothing. Then she turned to look at her daughters. Lily had picked up a fallen leaf and was carefully tearing it into perfect halves. Sophie was trying to balance the juice box on her head. Sarah let out a slow, tired breath. "They're all I have," she said. "You don't have to do it alone anymore," he said. "Let me help. Even if it's just a little." Sarah looked at him again. And this time, something softened, just a little, just enough to let the next part of the story begin. Sarah didn't answer Andrew that day. She gathered Lily and Sophie, murmured something to them, and left without another word. Andrew didn't follow, he knew better. He stood there for several minutes after they disappeared down the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, surrounded by the dull hum of city traffic and the growing ache of his own regret. Everything he thought he had made peace with came rushing back in violent waves. 5 years ago, he had walked away from a life he was too afraid to claim. Now, without asking for it, that life had found him again. 2 days passed before he heard from her. He had left his number with a note folded neatly and tucked under the paper bag she dropped when they spoke. It was short and quiet, *, "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I hope you'll let me listen." *, he didn't expect her to call, but she did. Her voice was still cautious, brittle at the edges, but not angry. She asked if he would meet them at a public park near her neighborhood. Somewhere open. Somewhere safe. He understood. She was still protecting them, from him. When he arrived, they were already there. The park was small but charming, tucked between 2 rows of old brownstones, with a modest playground and a rusted swing set. Lily and Sophie were on the swings, taking turns pushing each other, their laughter carrying through the spring air like a song he didn't realize he missed until that moment. Sarah sat on a nearby bench, arms crossed over her chest, watching them with the wary alertness of someone who had learned never to let her guard down. Andrew approached slowly and sat down on the far side of the bench, giving her space. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just watched the girls play. It was Sarah who finally broke the silence. "They're smart. And sensitive. Sophie's a little shy, but she opens up when she's drawing. Lily's more headstrong. She likes to ask questions until she gets an answer that makes sense to her." Andrew smiled faintly. "Sounds like someone I used to know." She didn't respond to that, just kept her eyes on the girls. "You left before I even had the chance to tell you their names," she said after a moment. "I wanted to. I sat in my apartment for hours with the phone in my hand, ready to call you. But every time, I remembered how you looked at me when I told you I was pregnant. Like I had ruined your life." He didn't try to defend himself. There was no defense for what he'd done. He had run. Not because of her. Not because of the babies. Because of what he saw in himself. The fear of failure had overridden everything else. And in the process, he became the very thing he swore he'd never be: absent. Silent. "I was terrified," he admitted. "Of being like my father. Of not knowing how to be a parent. I thought if I left, I'd spare you the pain of watching me fail. But I only created more pain. I see that now." Sarah glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I didn't need perfect, Andrew. I just needed you to stay." That sentence gutted him more than anything else she could have said. He swallowed hard, watching Sophie tumble off a swing, then bounce up with a laugh. Lily dusted her off like a tiny mother hen. They were vibrant, alive, beautiful. And he had missed it all. He shifted slightly on the bench. "I don't want to take anything from you. You've done the hard work. You've raised them. You've kept them safe. I just want to earn a place in their lives. To know them. To help." Sarah didn't respond right away. Instead, She watched her daughters quietly for another minute before speaking. They've never met their biological father. They don't even know what that means. I've told them stories about you. That you lived far away. That you were busy. It wasn't much, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them you chose not to be there. Andrew looked down at his hands. I didn't deserve the stories. She shrugged. They weren't for you. They were for them. So they could believe their father was someone worth imagining. Those words cut deeper than judgment. They were hope, wrapped in protection. She had shielded the girls even from the pain of his absence, giving them space to believe in someone he hadn't had the courage to be. And now, they were old enough to start wondering. Sophie noticed them then and ran over, Lily just behind her. Are you Mommy's friend? Sophie asked, squinting up at him with the open curiosity only children have. Andrew hesitated, then smiled. I'd like to be. Lily tilted her head, suspicious. You look like us. Sarah tensed beside him, but Andrew's smile widened just a little. I guess I do. Sophie slipped her hand into his without asking, and something inside him cracked wide open. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his, trusting without condition, and he felt the weight of 5 lost years settle into that single touch. Sarah stood up. Let's walk. There's a cafe nearby. We can sit and talk. Somewhere with less wind. Andrew rose too, stunned by the quiet invitation. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something close. A door, not wide open, but no longer locked. As they walked away from the park, the girls running ahead of them, he realized this wasn't about making up for the past. It was about showing up in the present. And staying. The cafe was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat on a quieter street just a few blocks from the park. It wasn't the kind of place Andrew would have chosen on his own, it lacked the sleek furniture and polished energy of his usual downtown haunts, but there was something comforting about it. The chipped paint on the windowsills, the soft hum of an old radio playing jazz, and the smell of fresh pastries made it feel lived in. Safe. Familiar. Sarah led the way inside with the girls, who immediately darted toward a table by the window, arguing over which cookie to share. Andrew followed, his steps unsure. He felt like a guest in a life he'd never seen before. A life that had existed entirely without him. Sarah ordered a coffee and hot chocolate for the girls. Andrew tried to pay, but she waved him off without a word. It wasn't pride exactly, it was control. A subtle but powerful reminder that this world belonged to her and the girls, and he wasn't entitled to anything within it. They sat at a corner table. The girls dug into a plate of cookies, already distracted, which gave Sarah and Andrew a pocket of time. She sat across from him, her arms folded loosely on the table, her expression calm but unreadable. He tried not to look like he was studying her face, but it was hard not to. The last time he'd really seen her was 5 years ago, and in some ways, she looked exactly the same, still beautiful, still composed, but there was something in her now that hadn't been there before. A hardness. Not bitterness, but resilience. She had lived through something, and it showed. I don't bring them here often, she said after a while, glancing at the girls. It's a treat. Andrew nodded. They seem happy. They are, she said. Most days. He heard the weight in those words, the unspoken realities of struggle, of fear, of what it must have been like to raise 2 children alone with no support. It humbled him in a way that money never could. She hadn't just survived, she had built something good for them, even if it was hard. I still can't believe I found them like that, he said quietly. On the street. Talking to strangers. Sarah looked away for a moment, guilt flashing across her features. It wasn't planned. They'd been hearing too much at home. Things they shouldn't hear. My husband, ex-husband, he's not good to them. Not in the ways that leave bruises on the outside, but, she trailed off. Kids are smart. They feel things. Andrew felt the slow rise of anger stir in his chest. He didn't know much about the man she had been with, but what he did know was already too much. Why did you stay with him? The question came out before he could soften it. Sarah met his eyes directly, and her voice didn't tremble. Because I had no job, no family nearby, no income. I didn't have time to think about pride or what I deserved. I thought a roof and food and 2 parents, even a bad one, might be better than nothing. I was wrong. Andrew leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. I want to help. Not just with money. I can get you a better apartment. A lawyer. Therapy, if you want it, for you or the girls. Anything. You don't have to do this alone anymore. She studied him. Not his suit or his polished shoes or the expensive watch he forgot to take off. She looked at him like she was trying to see beneath all of that, to measure the sincerity of what he was offering. You want to make up for what you missed? She asked. I want to be present for what's still ahead, he said. I can't undo what I did. I can't erase the years. But I can show up now. And I can stay. Sarah said nothing for a long moment. Then she looked out the window, her face unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. You know what hurt the most? She asked, still not looking at him. It wasn't the fear, or the money, or even being alone. It was having no one to witness them growing. No one to tell me I was doing okay. Every scraped knee, every birthday cake I made from scratch. I did it all, and there was no one there to say, good job, Sarah. Not even once. Andrew's throat tightened. You did better than okay, he said quietly. You raised 2 amazing girls. I can see that in 5 minutes. Finally, she turned back to him, her expression a mixture of caution and something like hope. Then start with that. Be here for the next 5 minutes. Then maybe 5 more. 1 day at a time. He nodded. I can do that. As they stood to leave, Lily grabbed his hand without thinking. He looked down at her tiny fingers curled around his and then up at Sarah, who hadn't missed the moment but said nothing. She simply reached for Sophie's backpack, handed Andrew the smaller of the lunch bags, and said, we walk from here. So they walked together. Not as a family, not yet, but something resembling it. A beginning, fragile and real. And this time, Andrew didn't feel like he was walking away from something. For the first time in 5 years, he was finally walking toward it. Over the following weeks, something strange and delicate began to grow between them. It wasn't quite trust, not yet, but it was a mutual willingness to try. Andrew began showing up more regularly, always on time, never empty-handed but never overbearing. He brought books for the girls, not expensive toys, stories he had loved as a child, things with dragons and foxes and brave little girls who saved the day. He didn't try to buy their affection. He didn't push. He was simply there, steady, like a new rhythm they hadn't known they were missing. Sarah kept her distance emotionally, but she allowed space for him to be present. That alone was monumental. She watched the way the girls responded to him, not with blind enthusiasm, but with the curiosity and openness of children who wanted desperately to believe in something good. Lily, ever the cautious one, asked questions constantly, what he did for work, why he wore a watch even when he had a phone, what his favorite cereal was. Sophie, on the other hand, was gentler, quieter, but she would drift toward him more and more, curling up next to him while he read, reaching for his hand without looking, humming when he spoke like she was anchoring herself to his voice. Andrew didn't speak much about the past. He didn't try to explain away what he had done. He simply focused on the present, knowing every action mattered more than any apology could. He helped Sarah fix the broken leg on their kitchen table. He replaced the flickering bulb in the hallway that had been bothering her for months. He offered to babysit when she had a job interview and didn't flinch when Sophie had a full-on meltdown because she couldn't find her favorite headband. He crouched beside her, helped her search every corner of the apartment, and then tied a scarf around her head like a superhero cape until she forgot what she had been crying about. It was those small, quiet moments that began to change things. One night, as they all sat in the living room, Lily and Sophie building a house of pillows and blankets, Sarah found herself watching Andrew instead of the girls. He was helping balance a couch cushion, his sleeves rolled up, a soft smile on his face. He looked at home. And that scared her more than anything. She didn't trust how easy it felt. How much she wanted to believe this version of him was real. Later, after the girls had gone to sleep, she sat with him at the kitchen table. There was only one light on, and the silence between them felt heavier than it had in weeks. She poured herself a cup of tea and offered him one. He accepted, wrapping his hands around the mug like it was something sacred. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. "I don't know what you want this to be." He didn't look away. "I want to be their father. I want to earn the right to be in their lives. And I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." Her voice was flat. "That's easy to say. I know it is. That's why I haven't said it until now. But I mean it." Sarah exhaled slowly. "They're getting attached. Fast. I can see it happening. And if you change your mind again, if you disappear, this time, I won't be the only one who suffers." Andrew nodded, his face grave. "I won't. I've already missed too much. I can't undo what I did. But I can stay. I can show up. Every single time." She looked down at her tea, then back at him. "You think that's enough?" "I think it's a start," he said. "And I think, maybe, we both need to learn how to build something from a place that was broken." There was no romantic tension in that moment, no movie scene promise. Just two adults, scarred and cautious, sitting across from each other and trying to figure out how to move forward with more grace than the past had allowed them. Sarah didn't say anything else that night. But she didn't ask him to leave either. In the weeks that followed, they began forming a routine. Saturday breakfasts became their thing. Andrew would bring bagels and fresh fruit, and they'd eat together around the kitchen table. He helped Lily build a model volcano for a school project and taught Sophie how to tie her shoelaces. The girls began to talk about him at school, drawing pictures with "Daddy" written in shaky crayon letters. One afternoon, Lily brought home a class assignment where she had drawn a family tree. Andrew's name was there, below hers, written without hesitation. Sarah saw it, paused, and said nothing. But that night, when she walked past the bedroom where Andrew was reading to them, she stood in the hallway a little longer. The soft glow of the lamp lit up all three of their faces. Sophie was curled under his arm, already dozing. Lily rested her head on his chest. And Andrew kept reading, his voice low and steady, like this was something he had done all his life. It wasn't trust yet. But it was something growing. Something fragile. Something true. Spring had begun to settle into the city with a softness that felt almost symbolic. The trees along the sidewalks were beginning to bloom, and the air carried that familiar scent of warmth returning after months of cold. Life seemed to be shifting, gently, but undeniably, and Andrew felt it in the small ways, the way the girls ran to him now instead of walking, the way Sarah no longer stood by the door while he read bedtime stories, the way his own chest loosened each time he stepped into their home as if it were his too. But just as things began to feel stable, reality reminded them all how fragile that peace really was. It happened during the school's annual Family Day. The girls had been talking about it for weeks. There would be games, music, crafts, and a short student performance. Sarah had prepared snacks for their class, and Andrew had promised to be there early to help set up. The girls had drawn posters with construction paper hearts and glitter glue that read, "Welcome to our family." It was their first public moment of acknowledgement, one where Andrew wouldn't just be a man they knew, but someone they were proud to stand beside. At first, everything went beautifully. Andrew arrived with balloons, helped tape up streamers, and even tied little bows in Sophie's hair when Sarah's hands were full. He stood proudly beside the girls as they sang their class song, clapped too loudly when it was over, and beamed when Lily dragged him to their art station to show him a finger painting of the four of them, him, Sarah, the girls, and a small orange cat they didn't even own. He was almost dizzy from the sheer warmth of it all. But then it happened. While the girls were off playing, Sarah had stepped away to talk to another parent, and Andrew stood by the refreshment table refilling juice cups when he overheard it. Two women, standing just a few feet behind him, speaking in hushed tones, but not quietly enough. "That's the father?" one asked. "Didn't he leave them before they were even born? I heard he ran off when she got pregnant. Just disappeared. And now he thinks he can waltz back in and play dad." Andrew's hand froze mid-pour. The voices blurred after that, their words colliding with the sound of children laughing and music playing. He wasn't sure what hurt more, that people still saw him as a coward, or that it was true. For a long time, it had been. When he turned around, he caught a glimpse of Sophie standing nearby. She had heard them too. Her face had changed, her usual bright expression faded, her little fingers curled into the hem of her dress. She looked confused, uncertain, as if something she believed had just cracked a little. Andrew went to her immediately, crouching down. "Sophie," he said gently, "you okay?" She didn't look at him at first. Then, in a small voice, she asked, "Is it true? You didn't want us?" Andrew's chest felt like it might cave in. He had prepared himself for hard conversations, with Sarah, with the world, but he hadn't prepared for this one, not yet. Not from her. But he knew he couldn't lie. Not ever again. "I was scared," he said quietly. "When I found out about you and Lily, I didn't know how to be a dad. So I left. And that was wrong. I was wrong. But I never stopped thinking about you. Not once. And now that I know you, I love you more than anything. And I will never leave again." Sophie looked at him for a long moment, eyes round and searching, as if trying to decide whether her heart could trust his words. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her cheek against his shoulder. "I don't want you to leave again," she whispered. "I won't," he said into her hair, and he meant it. Later, Sarah found him sitting on a bench outside, holding Sophie in his lap as she dozed, exhausted from the day. She could see the wear in his eyes, the heaviness that hadn't been there that morning. She sat down beside him, and for a while, they didn't say anything. Then he told her what happened. He repeated Sophie's question, word for word, and his answer, just as softly. Sarah listened in silence. She didn't offer comfort. She didn't get angry. She simply sat beside him, steady, the way she had always been when life was hard. Finally, she spoke. "They'll hear things," she said. "People will always talk. That's not what matters. What matters is what they see every day. And they see you here." He looked at her, the exhaustion in his face giving way to something softer. "Do you believe that too?" Sarah didn't smile, but she didn't look away. "I'm trying," she said. "Every day, I try a little more." And that was enough. Maybe not everything, but enough. Because trying meant there was still space to grow. To heal. To become something real again. As summer approached, something shifted, not with loud declarations or sweeping gestures, but in the quiet moments that slowly reshaped the way they all lived together. Andrew was no longer a visitor or a special guest in the lives of Sarah and the girls. He had become part of the rhythm. He started keeping a spare key, picking up groceries, knowing which of Sophie's stuffed animals she needed to fall asleep and what song Lily liked to listen to on the way to school. The girls no longer hesitated before reaching for his hand. They didn't call him Andrew anymore either. One day, unprompted, Sophie just said, "Daddy," and Lily followed soon after. He had excused himself to the bathroom to cry the first time he heard it, pressing a hand to his mouth to muffle the sob that rose too quickly to stop. Sarah had noticed too. At first, she said nothing. She had long learned the difference between moments that needed to be acknowledged and moments that needed to simply be felt. But little by little, the walls she had carefully built over 5 years began to thin. She no longer flinched when he offered to help with dinner. She asked his opinion about the girls' school. She let him carry her coat or refill her tea without brushing it off as unnecessary. Trust was still tender, not fully rebuilt, but there was no longer that heavy silence between them. There was space now, and in that space, something new was growing. One warm Saturday evening, after a long day at the park, they found themselves back at Sarah's apartment. The girls had fallen asleep on the couch in a pile of tangled limbs and popsicle-stained clothes. The windows were open, letting in the sounds of the city in summertime, distant music, laughter, the occasional hum of traffic. The lights inside were soft and golden. It had been a good day. Sarah stood in the kitchen, rinsing juice cups in the sink. Andrew came in quietly behind her and leaned against the doorway, watching her for a moment. There was something so natural in the scene, her hair loose and falling across her shoulders, her fingers moving through the water with practiced ease, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been when he first returned. He almost didn't want to break the moment, but the silence between them now invited conversation rather than avoided it. "She's starting to draw us," he said gently. "All 4 of us. In the same house. Holding hands." Sarah didn't look up. "Lily, too," she said. "She asked me if she should make room on her bunk for you, in case you stayed over one night." He laughed softly, then stopped, watching her carefully. "What did you say?" "I told her that was up to you." Andrew took a breath. "I'd stay, Sarah. Not just for a night. I'd stay forever." She finally turned, the towel in her hands forgotten. Her eyes met his, no fear, no doubt, just quiet sincerity. "I know you would," she said. He took a step closer. "And you? Could you want that?" "Not because of the girls. For you." She leaned back against the counter, considering him, not the man she had loved before, but the man he had become. He wasn't making promises anymore. He was offering presence. Stability. A kind of love that had been sanded down by time and pain into something real. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I was just starting to feel strong again. Like I had figured out who I was without you. And now you're back, and everything feels like it could fall apart if I let myself believe too much." Andrew nodded slowly. "Then we won't rush anything. No big decisions. No pressure. I'll keep showing up. I'll earn every step. I don't need perfect. I just need the chance." Sarah looked past him, toward the living room, where the girls were breathing deeply in their sleep, heads resting against each other. They looked peaceful. Safe. Whole. "You already have the chance," she said. "You've had it for a while now. I just didn't know how to tell you." A quiet pause settled between them, not heavy but meaningful. Then she stepped forward, standing close, and without ceremony or drama, she reached for his hand. He took it gently, their fingers interlacing as if they'd always fit that way. They stood like that for a long moment, no need for anything more. Later that night, after he carried Lily to her bed and tucked Sophie in beside her, Andrew stepped back into the hallway to find Sarah waiting for him by the door. She looked up at him, hesitating for just a moment before speaking. "If you're serious," she said, her voice steady but soft, "maybe we don't have to pretend this isn't happening anymore." Andrew smiled, slow and full. "I am serious." Sarah opened the door, letting the evening breeze into the apartment. She looked out into the city, then back at him. Then stay. And so he did. The wedding wasn't grand, but it didn't need to be. There were no crystal chandeliers or elegant invitations etched in gold foil. Instead, it took place in the modest community garden just 3 blocks from Sarah's apartment, surrounded by ivy-covered fences and string lights borrowed from neighbors. It was late summer by then, the kind of golden afternoon where everything seemed soft around the edges, where even the air felt gentle and familiar. The girls helped hang decorations, hand-painted paper lanterns and wildflowers picked from the garden's edges, and they insisted that their handmade "Mommy and Daddy Forever" banner be the centerpiece of it all. Andrew stood by the rose trellis in a simple gray suit, no tie, his hands clasped loosely in front of him as he tried to stay calm. He didn't feel nervous, not in the traditional sense. He had been sure of this for months. He wasn't marrying someone he had just fallen in love with, he was standing beside someone he had failed, found again, and chosen over and over since the moment he came back. This wasn't a beginning, it was a return. A quiet promise that what had once been broken had not only survived, but grown into something better. Sarah wore a cream-colored dress that brushed her calves and swayed when she walked. It had no lace, no train, but it fit her perfectly, as though it had been waiting for her all along. Her hair was loose, curling gently around her shoulders, and she carried a small bouquet of lavender and eucalyptus tied with twine. She didn't wear a veil. There was no need to cover her face or her past. She walked toward him with a calm kind of confidence, her eyes locked on his, and Andrew thought, not for the first time, that she had never looked stronger. Lily and Sophie stood between them, holding a small velvet box with the rings they had picked out themselves, a simple gold band for Sarah, and a silver one for Andrew with tiny initials engraved on the inside, S+L. The girls had insisted. They said it made it official. There was no officiant in a robe, no long speeches. A family friend spoke a few words, but the rest was theirs. Andrew took Sarah's hands, looked into her eyes, and said only what mattered. "I don't vow to be perfect. I've already failed once. But I vow to never walk away again. To stay. To grow. To listen, even when I don't understand. To choose you, and them, every day. This life, however messy or imperfect, is the only one I want." Sarah smiled, and tears welled in her eyes. But her voice was steady. "I've been hurt. I've been afraid. But I've also been loved. And this love, we built it in pieces, through pain, through patience. I vow not to forget the strength it took to get here. I vow to honor it. To believe in it. To let it guide me, even when it's hard." When they exchanged rings, Lily and Sophie clapped without waiting for permission. Everyone laughed. And when Andrew bent down and kissed each of the girls on the forehead before turning to kiss Sarah, there was a silence in the garden that felt holy. After the ceremony, there were sandwiches and lemonade served from a folding table, a portable speaker playing songs the girls had picked themselves, and children running barefoot on the grass. Sarah danced with Lily while Sophie climbed onto Andrew's back and demanded a piggyback ride. No one wore heels. No one gave toasts. But everything felt full and complete. Later in the evening, as the sun dipped low and the lights above the garden began to glow, Andrew brought out a small box. He called the girls over and had them sit on the blanket in front of him. Sarah watched from a short distance, arms folded and eyes curious. "I have something for you," Andrew said, opening the box to reveal 2 delicate gold bracelets. Each one had a tiny charm, one with the letter L, the other with an S, and in between them, a small silver heart engraved with the word "found." Lily gasped. Sophie whispered, "It's beautiful," as Andrew gently clasped the bracelet onto each of their wrists. "You found me before I even knew I was lost," he said. "And now, I'm never letting go." The girls hugged him tightly, and Sarah felt something swell in her chest, an emotion too large for one name. It was joy, yes, but also relief, closure, and gratitude layered into something whole and hard-earned. That night, the four of them walked home together, the girls half asleep in their parents' arms, the stars bright above the rooftops. There was no final line, no dramatic ending. Just a door unlocking, a light left on, a promise kept. And in a world that had once felt uncertain and broken, that was more than enough. The ending of this story doesn't just satisfy, it heals. It's the kind of conclusion that feels deeply earned, not through dramatic twists, but through small, human choices that build into something lasting. What makes it powerful is its refusal to romanticize the past or rush forgiveness. Instead, it honors the hard, uncomfortable work of rebuilding, showing up, listening, staying. Andrew's redemption isn't flashy, it's quiet and consistent, which is exactly why it matters. He doesn't try to erase his mistakes but chooses every day to be better, and in doing so, becomes the father and partner he once feared he couldn't be. Sarah's strength is equally vital, she doesn't forgive blindly. Her willingness to open the door again comes not from weakness, but from hard-won wisdom. The moment the girls receive their bracelets, with "found" engraved between their initials, is the emotional core of the entire journey. It's not about being rescued. It's about being seen, chosen, and finally held in the kind of love that doesn't leave. This story reminds us that the most extraordinary endings often come from the people who learn how to stay when it matters most.